We discuss the ranch and sporting property market, buying and selling advice, the latest best stewardship practices, as well as topics currently impacting landowners today. Mirr Ranch Group is a full-service ranch real estate brokerage and consulting company focusing on legacy ranches and sporting and conservation properties around the West. Today, we figured because of the timing with the holidays being a busy time of the year for resort towns, we would look at resort communities and what it looks like to buy properties near resort towns. And we are going to be looking specifically at the top 6 things an informed buyer should know when buying a ranch property near a resort town. Thank you to everyone who has submitted questions. We will try to get to them on this broadcast, but if not, we will get back to you after this and answer them directly. Helping me out today is our resident expert in resort markets, our very own Tommy Latousek. So without further ado, here's Tommy. Hey there, Tommy.
Hi, Haley. How are you doing?
Thanks for joining us today. Sorry about the background noise. Big truck. We wanted you on here just because you, out of all, a lot of our brokers do sell properties near resort towns, but you in particular have had a lot of experience and success selling in resort communities. So we just wanted to pick your brain on some of that. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's true. I have a lot of experience in ranch resort real estate. In fact, I ran a farm and ranch division for an Aspen-based firm for 8 years. Mm-hmm. Sold lots of farms and ranches outside of Aspen, but I've also been quite active in other resort areas. And for the purposes of Mirr Ranch Group, we work generally in the Rocky Mountain West. So we have a lot of experience, certainly in Aspen, as mentioned, but also in Colorado, a lot of resort towns, places like Vail, Steamboat, Crested Butte, Breckenridge, Telluride. So, when we talk about resort real estate, we've sold a lot of stuff within, half hour of those places where you get that resort orbit effect. Mm-hmm. But we're also active in other states. So, Utah, you're talking about places like Park City. Wyoming, you've got Jackson. Montana, you've got the Big Sky Bozeman area. And of course, New Mexico, you've got the Taos Santa Fe area. So we have listings periodically from all those places. So as you visit these places and if you fall in love with any of them, like a lot of folks do, we often have a property that's near these resort areas. So they tend to be very scenic. With lots of amenities and good resources. They can be busier and things like that. There's a seasonality effect. We'll get into all of these things here with this discussion. So
yeah, and it's nice too. I know a lot of times when people are looking in resort communities, they first, tend to go to some of the residential brokers who are located in those resort communities, which is super helpful because they know the market, they know the people. But it is always super helpful to have a ranch broker on your side because while it may be close to these market spaces, it's still a very different beast, and people need to be educated on kind of the differences with ranches near resort communities as compared to some of our other listing or even just residential properties. So it's good to have people like you that kind of know both. So we'll kind of get into it, the top 6 things to consider when looking for a property near a resort town. And one of the first, and probably the reason people really look at resort areas, is the recreational and cultural amenity part of the investment. So, when we were talking about, like you were saying, Aspen and Vail and Jackson and all these places, there is kind of this recreational and cultural piece that maybe you wouldn't get on some other ranch communities. So I guess we'll just go into that a little bit more and what you've seen over the years.
Right. Yeah. If you buy a ranch near any of these resort towns, you're obviously buying large acreage rural places for the elbow room and to have privacy and to have, recreation on your property to experience for yourself and your family and friends, hunting, fishing, horseback riding, things of that sorts. But what we're talking about today are those additional amenities you'll get from living in these areas. And obviously, skiing is a big part of that. Most of these towns have based their economies on the skiing business and the downhill ski recreation, cross country skiing, etc. So for you ranch owners that like to ski, being near a ski town is a fabulous thing. And I have ranch owner clients who might live, let's say, a half an hour away, let's say Carbondale or Glenwood Springs as it relates to Aspen. And some of them will ski every day during the season. Some of them might ski once a week. They like that ability to go experience world-class skiing, just down the road while living on their ranch. And not just skiing, though. The ski towns, of course, are often known for their cultural amenities. A lot of them have terrific restaurants, music festivals, things like that. So a lot of ranch owners love the ability to go get a good steak dinner in town when family and friends come into town. So you get that in these towns, as opposed to some ranches which can be very remote in your little towns that don't have those things. So you get that in a ranch resort area. And then also being there locally in a ski town, certain times of year can be, of course, very busy. The holidays, of course, are busiest time of year in places like Aspen and Vail. But there are really quiet times of year, in January and later in April, and obviously, in the summers and the off season in spring and fall, they're really quiet. And while some businesses might close down, there's usually, most of these ski towns are big enough where there's still a lot of restaurants and cafes to experience during the off times of year, which is fabulous to experience a lot of these towns during the quiet times of year. So being a local, has its advantages and opportunities in that way.
Well, it's nice too, because a lot of our clients, we deal with a lot of ultra high net worth individuals who do want these ranch escapes where they can have land, they can have privacy, they can have the great outdoors. But to be close to a resort community is special because you can still have access to maybe those things that you've grown accustomed to as an ultra high net worth investor, like Clark's Seafood, for instance, in Aspen, or sometimes even the art scene, like up in Steamboat. I know they have a couple really beautiful. So to be able to have access to all of that is really special, and you don't get that a lot with ranches. Another kind of one of the things that we always talk about, because I've dealt with some buyers looking in near resort towns too, is the income opportunities. We've had a podcast a couple weeks ago with Eric with the Land Report about the income generation that one can experience as a ranch owner. And some of those income opportunities are a little bit easier to obtain when you're looking at some of the outfitting and the guiding and a couple other things we can talk about now. But if you're looking close to a resort town, what are some of the things that you have seen ranchers be able to obtain when it comes to income opportunities when they do look closer to resort towns?
Right. Yeah. These resort towns have, flourishing, busy economies, and they need, they have a supply chain that they tap into, and, they love to use resources from, local farms and ranches. So in places like Aspen, Vail, Telluride, a lot of them are supplied by farmers and ranchers that are near these communities. And also, vegetables like from Paonia and Grand Junction go to Telluride and go to Aspen. That we purchased and represented buyers and sellers of in the past in all these markets that supply these ski towns. And then, of course, with meats and steaks, things like 7X Ranch in Gunnison County supplies a lot of Aspen and Telluride and Crested Butte. So these have all been clients of ours that have tapped into that supply chain for these areas. And then you've also got sort of the tourism recreation part of it. A lot of these big ranches have great fishing and hunting resources that visitors to these ski towns will visit these properties and pay, for that opportunity to hunt and fish. We have the Dallenbach property on the Frying Pan, for instance, in Basalt, which is just 25 minutes from Aspen.
Mm-hmm.
They've got lots of cabins that they rent out to tourists, and then they've got world-class fishing on the property on the Frying Pan, which is a gold medal stream. So they generate a lot of income through things like that, and they also host weddings and not-for-profit events. They have a busy business doing that at the Dallenbach property, and other properties that we work on. The farm on the Colorado, a current listing of mine, is within an hour of Aspen and Vail, and some smaller ski areas like Sunlight and Powderhorn, and they have a flourishing hunting outfitting business, and also supply some of they grow a lot of hay there, and that hay goes to a local family who raises the beef for a lot of the ski town restaurants. So a lot of that, and I know in Steamboat, there's a sheep and wool market, some properties that we've worked on there, and so there's a lot of neat sort of copacetic relationships that happen with the hinterlands where the ranches are and with these ski towns. So it's possible to own a ranch that is a participant in that economy, to generate income that way.
Well, it's nice because there are more people and because there are more businesses, it does kind of encourage a larger market space for ranching communities and creates these relationships that might be a little bit harder to create. Maybe if you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't have these businesses that you can access really easily. So it's neat to see kind of that income generation potential in that market space. And I know, especially with, the wedding situation, a lot of ranches have become very successful. And it's not like you need your entire ranch to be a wedding venue necessarily, but you could have a piece of it, generate some of that on it seasonality wise, and then the rest of it could be cattle operation. It really is neat that there's a lot of these new opportunities that have arisen with kind of the tourism that's increased in some of these resort towns.
Right. Especially if you have a great barn. If you have a great barn,
if
love that. Yeah.
The Instagrammers, as long as you have something that can be Instagrammable, you've got it. Well, beyond even that, when it comes to income generation, another way that ranchers can experience this, especially when they're close to resort towns, is through conservation easements and kind of this development opportunity or the conservation, when we're looking at some of these ranches there's not that much or many ranches that are, sizable near resort towns. So they're high demand, and it's the development potential for these is high. Can you talk about maybe some experiences you've had in the past where you've sold to a developer or you've sold and they've become a conservation kind of opportunity?
Sure. Yeah. I have experience in that realm, working in resort areas and coming from the land trust world. And certainly by definition, these resort area ranches come at a very high price point. Land in these ski towns tends to be quite expensive, usually amongst the most expensive markets in the Rocky Mountain West. So for that reason, there's extreme developability of these ranches. There's an acute need for housing in a lot of these regions. But these communities often, they really value open space for a lot of reasons, for the scenic element, for wildlife. And so there's very active land trusts in these markets too, that work with landowners, ranch owners, to conserve these settings. So if you own one of these ranches, there's obviously an opportunity to preserve the property, but there's also an opportunity to develop portions of it in a sensitive fashion. So what we see in a lot of these markets are what people call conservation developments, where they develop these ranches in a very sensitive fashion, a lot less than you know than some of the dense
Mhm.
developments that you'll see maybe in the metro area. And so we have experience with some of those. I think of Storm Mountain and Marabou in the Steamboat area, and places like around Aspen. There's a lot of these developments. So that's a way to generate some income to sort of finance the purchase of a property. The more developable a property is, the more the conservation easement is going to be worth. So if
Mhm.
you're foregoing some development potential, especially in Colorado, there's the opportunity to be paid for conserving that property. So that's the way to generate some income for your property and to make these expensive purchases a little more palatable. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, Pass Creek Ranch is a current listing of ours, just down the road from Breckenridge and Keystone and all the Summit County resorts. That property has Blue River frontage, a terrific trout fishery. Does not have a conservation easement on it, so there's an
Mhm.
opportunity there to conserve that property. The other benefit in a lot of these areas, a lot of these markets have a lot of conserved properties, so you might get the chance to actually be a neighbor of conserved properties. So then you get that benefit of being in a really preserved corridor and having all that open space in your general vicinity. So there's benefits that way too. So when you buy into a resort area, you want to ask about properties in the area that are conserved or where those opportunities may or may not be. So,
Mhm.
that's another way, to generate some income. The farm on the Colorado, as I mentioned, is within an hour of Aspen and Vail. That property is a rare one in our portfolio where we tend to work on just ranches. Um, Ranches that are staying ranches. This is a property that's actually a investment opportunity, a development opportunity. It's right next to a town, so it's a property that is ripe for development. It's not a conservation property,
Mhm.
but because it's in the resort orbit of these ski towns, there's a strong need for housing. So good chance it's going to be a master plan community of some sort.
Mhm.
Because of that demand. So not, in addition to the consumer market that we talked about, there's also the conservation and real estate development side of owning a ranch.
Mhm. And it's really important when you're looking to sell your ranch or you're looking to buy a ranch that you talk with a broker and you talk with kind of professionals in the conservation field or, talk to your broker. Is this something that has development potential? I might think it does, but maybe there's some issues I wasn't aware of before we market it as such. Maybe we should talk about it. Because, and that's, we just had our, a live stream on title last week, and that was all kind of about that. Looking at the title, making sure, is this something that could be developed? Is this a strong candidate for conservation? All of those things. So I think working with a ranch broker as a buyer or a seller and making sure you kind of are aware of all of uh, the title issues and the conservation potential of a property is big. And we do have a strong relationship with a couple of different conservation groups around Colorado and Wyoming that can kind of look at your property and see what would this generate income wise if there was an easement on it. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. And as you were saying, the closer you get to a resort town, the higher the demand and the less of ranches that are available. So it is a strong part of knowing a little bit more before you dive into looking in resort communities.
Mhm.
Um, Another thing that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier was the seasonality of tourist towns. When you are looking at a property near a resort town, you might be looking when you're skiing or when you're there in the summer during 4th of July, and you might think that the town is like this all year round. but kind of knowing what those, we call them mud season or shoulder seasons are, and what those might look like, and talking with your brokers. Because, I mean, you know Aspen very well. You know a lot of these resort towns. Some of these places do get pretty quiet during the shoulder and mud season. Not in a bad way. It's kind of in a beautiful way. You kind of get to know the locals and the people that live there, but just being aware of that seasonality is big as an investor.
Right, right. In fact, if you're flying into these areas, the number of flights will fall off dramatically after the ski season in May and months like May and November and October. So be aware of that if you're visiting. There's a ton of flights, from starting around now and early mid-December through the ski season in say mid-April. But those fall off at other times of the year. They're very sort of opportunistic, and things. The number of flights can be volatile. So be aware of that if you're buying into these areas. But also be aware that even in the winter season, again around now, early December into April. That whole ski season might not be all busy. It's busy over Christmas. It's busy over holiday weekends, like President's Day weekend, maybe Easter. But, early mid-January is really quiet. February, other than President's Day weekend, can be quiet. And then late in the year, in say April, when the skiing can still be fabulous, that can be a really quiet time of year too. So, when you live in our part of a resort town orbit, you get a feel for that sort of micro schedule in these little towns, and something that you can really take advantage of, and especially if you can ski during the week. A lot of these places get a lot busier, especially Summit County, and if you're in Utah, and the Salt Lake ski areas, weekends can be kind of crazy. But if you're a local, you can go up for a couple hours on a weekday and have it to yourself. So that sort of up and down nature is something that's kind of fun to become knowledgeable about when you're local and on your ranch nearby. So.
And I know I have a lot of friends that live in the mountains. That's kind of their shoulder season, and their mud season's kind of their favorite part about living in the mountains. So it's just knowing those things, because a lot of people don't know that when they come out, and seeing the beauty in that, and talking to your broker and knowing what those months are and those days are, is big. And another thing, and we kind of again alluded to it in some of our conversations, something to know about is the accessibility and the ease of accessibility when it comes to ranches near resort towns. We sell properties. I know I won't name the name, but it is one of Jeff and Pat's listings, and it's an incredible hunting property. But I know you have to take like a 4-hour car ride on a 2-track to get to the hunting, with all, it's surrounded by national forests, unbelievable. But that might not be in everyone's wheelhouse. That might not seem like the best thing. Some people want to get off a flight, have a cart waiting, and get to their ranch. So that's one thing that resort towns can afford to investors, which I think is big.
Yeah, a lot of our properties can be very remote, and that's a wonderful thing that people want. Again, that large acreage, privacy, and elbow room. And the resort ranch real estate tends to be like the opposite of that. Much more accessible. You'll have a paved road probably right to your ranch gate, and these roads, even if they're county roads, are maintained year round, and you'll have snow plows come through as soon as it snows. Those are all things that are your own responsibility on other properties. But in these areas near all of those amenities and resources, you'll get to sort of ride the coattails of all that, and make your life a little easier by being able to get back and forth much more easy. You'll have everything is taken care of for year round, again by the county, or if you're in a conservation development with that might be an HOA of sorts, you'll be paying for that through the HOA. But ski towns by definition are high elevation and get a lot of snow. So snow removal is important.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things that you get from that sort of community accessibility. And in the summer, it's similar where you get to sort of again ride the coattails of that proximity and accessibility.
Mhm.
Uh, so something to be aware of when you're looking at close to ski towns around the west.
And another thing that kind of brings up when a property is as accessible as properties tend to be when they're close to resort towns, it's also easy to have guests come visit the property. It's easier to find managers. And, let's say you don't want a full time manager, but you want someone to come check on the property here and there or have the improvements ready for when you arrive or your guests arrive. There's that accessibility too, where people can come up to the ranch, make sure it's ready to go, but maybe you don't need to have a full-time person all the time. Um,
True.
a
Yeah,
lot of
you've
ranches
got
don't have.
schools and stuff, so that your ranch manager, it could be easier to find employees for your property because of the community resources you have there nearby.
Mhm.
Um, Things like schools and hospitals. We didn't get into that, but all of those other community resources you'll have in these ski towns as well. So,
No. And not to mention, it makes a broker's life a whole lot easier when you can access the property year round for buyers and investors and that kind of thing. So we
right.
always it's nice to get these properties that, when buyers start to look at the market, a lot of times we have to have buyers wait till this spring and the summer. But if you find a property that you like that is near a resort town and you want to see it in the middle of December, you want to see it in January, we'll be able to show it to you. Maybe you won't be able to see every inch of the property, but unlike a lot of our harder to reach properties that are for sale, resort town properties you can see them all year round with us, which is
Right. The seasonality of our showing season, we have some mountain stuff that really goes quiet in the midwinter.
mhm,
But with the ski towns, that's when the busiest time of year happens. So you get a lot of the buyers, especially coming through town, that want to see stuff in December and January and whatnot. So we
mhm.
stand ready to help those folks. In
We're
fact,
ready.
I have I have showings this week at the farm on the Colorado and at Dallenbach, um, versus some of my other ones that go kind of quiet. So
Yeah, if you do have interest in seeing some of those, we can find snow cats. We can make
yeah,
it happen, but these are the ones that we don't have to go too overboard when it comes to viewing. And that just comes back kind of full circle. It is the holiday season. A lot of people are coming out to view properties for sale when they're skiing or coming out to Colorado or Wyoming or Utah with their families. If you are kind of coming out and you're interested, this is a good time to reach out to brokers and schedule some things while you're out here for the wintertime and start looking at spots. But I think, Tommy, do you have any words of advice for people that are coming out maybe this winter to ski who are interested in looking at some ranches and resort towns?
well, I know this time of year the snow is looking great, so I would strongly recommend coming out. Early season snowfall has been terrific, so we love to see that. Should be a busy season. I think the pattern is gonna stick. So come on
Mhm.
out. Call your ranch broker if you're looking at ranches. A lot of the residential brokers, it's a totally different kind of transaction. So you want the expertise of a good ranch broker. A lot of us have experience in these markets. And with the skiing being really good, I know ranch brokers like me will be out there a lot this winter. So I stand ready to help you take a look at properties and ranches in any of these markets
Yeah.
that we've spoken of around the Rocky Mountain West. Give us a call. Take a
Yep.
look at our website. Yeah.
You'll be up in Aspen. I'll be Steamboat. Daniel be Crested Butte. We got it covered. So if you need people to show you properties in any of those resort towns, you let
Right.
us know. Well,
Yep.
thank you, Tommy, so much. And we always appreciate you having you on here. And thank you for your insight into the resort market and resort ranches. And if anyone has a question, I'll have them give you a call.
Great. Thank you, Haley.
Thanks, Tom. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
And if you want to learn more about ranch real estate, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter on our website at www.mirranchgroup.com or give us a call at 303-623-4545. Have fun skiing out there. Happy holidays.